the only thing I know to do is just to keep hanging on until this rat bastard is gone, which brings me to Nancy Pelosi and impeachment. During the last 2 years of Bush, when Pelosi and the Democrats took over the House, and she'd made it very clear that there would be no impeachment of George W. Bush, I was pretty furious. And the reason for it was because George W. Bush had committed demonstrable war crimes. War crimes. Not the bullshit and incompetence that he showed while he was president here, his policies here in the United States. But he had committed a war crime of major proportion, a war crime that was so serious that Robert Jackson, the Supreme Court Justice who represented the United States at the Nuremberg trials, said at the time that the one, I'm paraphrasing, the one war crime that encompassed all the rest of the war crimes was the invasion of another country with no provocation whatsoever, just invading. His reference, I believe, was the invasion of Poland by the Nazis or various countries that Hitler invaded. But he was making a point in the Nuremberg trials. I forget which ones or who was, maybe it was just an opening or closing statement. I don't remember, but I do know Supreme Court Justice Robert Jackson said that. And Jackson was a conservative, if I remember. I wasn't. I mean, I don't remember being alive when he was a justice. I'm just saying from historical reading. I believe he was conservative. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that George W. Bush, by a definition applied by the United States, the United Kingdom, France, I guess we were the three, and possibly Russia, by the standards applied at the Nuremberg war crimes trial, George W. Bush was in fact a war criminal. And the first thing Pelosi said was there would be impeachments off the table. Well, I don't remember what I said 10 years ago, 12 years ago, but I was just incensed and screamed and frothed at the mouth and yelled and did my usual Malloy bullshit. I was so pissed off. Which brings us to now. Nancy Pelosi said the other day in an interview with Joe Heim of the Washington Post, I guess it was last Wednesday. She said, quote, "I'm not for impeachment," referring to Trump. "Impeachment is so divisive in the country that unless there's something so compelling and overwhelming and bipartisan, I don't think we should go down that path because it divides the country, and he's just not worth it." End quote. Then she added this, quote, "This is news," what she was saying. "I haven't told this to any press person before, but since you asked, and I've been thinking about this," and the quote, she gave her answer. Now, she said this knowing that she'd get an awful lot of heat and flack from the left flank of the Democratic Party, which she did and continues to get. But as the Post put it, her goal appears to be protecting vulnerable moderate members who are up for re-election next year in districts that Trump carried. Pelosi saw firsthand what happened to Republicans when they impeached Bill Clinton in the late 90s. And what happened was the Republicans lost control of everything. Now, Bill Clinton is, Donald Trump is not a Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was an adulterer and a sneak, but he was also 50,864,963,000,000,000,000 times smarter than this asshole Trump. And insofar as being a good Republican, Clinton was the best Republican president we've ever had. He wasn't a Democrat. He wasn't a liberal. But he was the best Republican president the United States has ever had. Did I like his policy? Fuck no, I didn't like his policies. Not all of them. But Donald Trump is no Bill Clinton. Donald Trump is a gangster. He's a thug. He's a low-rent human being who has no business heading a sewer commission, much less the presidency of the United States. So what to do? What to do? Pelosi talks about what happened to the Republicans when they impeached Clinton in the 90s. She's realistic that the Republican-controlled Senate, they're not going to convict Trump. Doesn't make any fucking difference what he does. They're not going to convict him. If Democrats act unilaterally and go after him. And Pelosi gave herself an out to change her mind if something new emerges, for example, from the Mueller investigation. When she said, impeachment is so divisive to the country that unless there's something so compelling and overwhelming and bipartisan, we shouldn't go down that path. And I have to tell you, I have to grit my teeth and agree with her this time. Democratic strategists believe that impeachment would give Trump a useful foil and get reluctant Republicans to rally behind him in 2020, which they will, barring any big explosive revelations from the investigations by Bob Mueller, or something that may come up from these newly empowered Democratic-led congressional committees in the House who are going to investigate when this asshole last wiped his own ass. They're going to go after everything, and they should. He's a criminal who was given a free pass by the Russians, by Fox, by the Electoral College, by his lies and deceptions, and by the media. Pelosi, as I think it's Greg Sargent who wrote this, I'm not sure who, but Pelosi is one of the shrewdest tacticians in modern political history. Whether you or I, as Democratic, Socialist, Liberal, whatever you want to call yourself, whatever I want to call myself, whether we like it or not, this is the arena in which she has to play. And because of that, she's one of the shrewdest tacticians in modern political history, and she appears to be playing a long game of trying to increase her party's chances, the Democratic Party, of keeping this majority in the House, maybe expanding it, and maybe picking it up in the Senate, and maybe the White House in the election coming up in a year and 8 months. 6 months. Representative Cheri Bustos, a Democrat from Illinois, who chairs the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC, that helps Democrats get elected to Congress. She said, quote, while liberal firebrands have won an outsized share of media coverage, the House Democratic majority was captured largely because of the freshmen who ran to the center. And many of them are uncomfortable with impeachment talk. Now, that wasn't said by Cheri Bustos, I'm sorry. That was said by Mike DeBonis in one of his online reports. Cheri Bustos said this, quote, "We've got 31 Democrats who serve in districts that Donald Trump won, and I'm one of them. When I go home, I don't have people asking me about impeaching him. That's just not something that I hear. They consistently ask about health care and rebuilding our country and figuring out how to work together." End quote. Cheri Bustos, the chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And whether we like it or not, as long as we have the system, you know, the leftists, Democratic Socialists, those of us who see the system as corrupt as anything that you and I have experienced in our lifetime, and I certainly don't deny that, dear God. But we've got a choice. We can think smart and play Pelosi's long game, or we can blow everything up, go ahead, have our impeachment orgy, and lose control of everything again, and be guaranteed that the Supreme Court will have 7, maybe 8 justices appointed by, 5 of them appointed by Trump, 2 of them appointed by other Republican right-wingers, or we can adopt the Pelosi tactic and play the long game. And Pelosi's comments are going to make it impossible for Trump to run around the country with his ass on fire saying, "Oh, the Democrats are going to impeach me. Oh, they're going to impeach me. They're going to impeach me." When the quick answer is, no, we're not. Not at all. So there goes that one incendiary bullshit now, that Trump had in his arsenal. It'll be gone. During her interview with Joe Heim, Pelosi was unequivocal that Trump is not fit to be president ethically and intellectually. And then she said, quote, "I hardly ever talk about him. You know, it's not about him. It's about what we can do for the people to lower health care costs, to get bigger paychecks, and to get cleaner government." And she's absolutely right. This is the problem. And I'm as guilty of this, probably more so, than anybody I can think of in any form of media, whether it's television or podcasts or video casts or YouTube or whatever it is. I focus so much energy and attention on this lump of shit. This man who, when he's dead, will be a fucking footnote to history. Nobody cares about this bastard in the long run. He is doing tremendous damage. But there's only so much damage he can do, and it can be limited. At least our institutions are strong enough. I'm not saying our regulatory agencies are strong enough. He can fuck with those. But he can't fuck with the institutions that are in place, which need an awful lot of help to fulfill what the framers said they were all about. But rather than, I have to agree with Pelosi, rather than focus on this orange bastard and what the shit, his ignorance, his stupidity, his immorality, his unethical behavior, all of it, rather than focus on that, I think what Pelosi is suggesting, let the House committees go ahead and investigate this bastard, and if they find crimes that even the Republicans cannot any longer ignore, as what happened with Nixon, then, and only then, should the idea of impeachment, which is an indictment, that's all it is, and then trial in the Senate to remove him from office, if it is so bipartisan, if the crimes are so egregious, and if there is left in the Republican Party on the Senate side, and on the House side for that matter, but especially on the Senate side, if there are any Republicans left who have an ounce of self-respect or honor for our institutions, not how we've misused them, but for what they say. If there's anybody, and it has to be a number of them, in the Senate, in the Republican Party, who has any sense of obligation to the oath every fucking one of them took to protect and defend the Constitution, then the move for impeachment should begin. So there you have my take. I know Kathy has tweeted a couple of things today on our Twitter feed in the heat of the moment about why not impeach the son of a bitch. Yeah, go ahead. Kathy wants to explain it. Go ahead. Oh, wait, one last thing. Some Democrats are pushing back against Pelosi. They still are. Here's one. This Representative David Cicilline, however you pronounce it, of Rhode Island, he said, quote, "If the facts require us to initiate removing the president, we're obligated to do it." Representative Jamie Ruskin of Maryland criticized Pelosi's suggestion that Trump is not worth impeaching. He said, quote, "The question is whether the republic is worth it," end quote. Some other House progressives insist that the option of impeachment must be preserved. Representative Ocasio-Cortez noted that she doesn't read Pelosi's comments as, quote, "designed to shut down the conversation," end quote. And she added that this would have to be, quote, "aired out," end quote, among Democrats. So, one last thing here before Kathy. What's his name? Greg Sargent also writes, "In fairness to Pelosi, her comments don't entirely preclude impeachment later, provided that so-called compelling and overwhelming new information arouses the bipartisan alarm." Politico's savvy reporters, Politico, speculate that Pelosi did this to create a holding pattern for Democrats, temporarily insulating them from unceasing questioning on this topic from activists by allowing them to blame Pelosi's opposition. All right, Kathy. No, I don't think I can hear you. Try it again. Nope. Your microphone's not working. Wait a minute. Maybe it'll work. Nope.
Then I'll have to talk this way. Okay, so the only reason that I tweeted all that last night, well, there were two reasons. The primary reason was I was pissed at Nancy Pelosi, and the secondary reason I was pissed at Home Depot. So you'll see the two tweets interspersed. But I think we either have a constitutional democracy or we don't, and a republic or we don't. And rule of law, if the Republicans are going to hammer it, if Nixon was impeachable and Trump isn't, then what are we saying to future generations? I keep thinking about 50 years down the road, how this is going to be viewed when history remembers this time. And I just look at this move by Pelosi. I understand it politically, but I think it's so politically cynical that it's damaging, further damaging to our already eroded values and system of justice that's just gotten to be so corrupted that we're actually contemplating letting a criminal president off without an impeachment. It's just astonishing to me, because if anyone thinks the Mueller report's going to come back and not find anything, I mean, there've been crimes out on the open. There were crimes on Lester Holt. I mean, it's just, he's individual number one. He's an unindicted co-conspirator in campaign finance. It's just, how many do you want? So if you're going to give him a pass, then who doesn't get a pass? Who is worthy of impeachment?
Okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. But it makes sense in the immediate here and now and I don't disagree with it. But, you know, I have to ask the same question that Pelosi's action brings up. And that question is, this is just a question I ask myself. Do I want the immediate pleasure of seeing Trump impeached, indicted, and then not convicted in the Senate? And what that would generate. Trump and Fox News and Breitbart and the rest of these sewer dwellers would spend the next year, whatever it takes until the election, just raucously celebrating the fact that he had not been convicted. And it would prove that the Democrats are full of shit. It would prove fake news. It would prove that Trump was right all around. That's how it would be spun. That Trump was right all along. That he's a righteous man. Those dirty Democrats. Now, that would be the outcome. I don't care if the son of a bitch goes out and shoots Mueller dead. That would still be the outcome. The Democrats were wrong. Our president was attacked. We've got to reelect him for another 4 years. We've got to get rid of the Democrats. He has to go ahead and appoint more Supreme Court justices. That's what impeaching him now would bring to this country. So, if he is guilty of crimes, and he is, obstruction immediately, every fucking time he's opened his mouth during this investigation, you can make the case for obstruction of justice. But if he is guilty, and he is, eventually this removal of this bastard from the presidency will happen, or after he is defeated for re-election, he will be indicted and he'll no longer be able to hide behind the presidency. So what I would say to people, including Kathy, who and including Mike Malloy from 12 years ago, that wants impeachment to remove this cancer from the presidency, you better be careful what you're wishing for and what you're pushing for, because the outcome of that, getting him impeached, would be 10 to 1,000 times worse than riding this for a while and let Trump think he's escaped, because he won't. But if we do it now, we're fucked. Completely. So, I just hope everyone who is itching for impeachment keeps that in mind. Now, all of this is conditional on Mueller not presenting to the Congress and the American people offenses that are so obviously impeachable that the Republicans could not stand in the way, that they would vote for conviction. If that's the case, then okay. And even that is risky. But we can't allow, and this is where I completely agree with Pelosi this time, we cannot allow an immediate desire, a desire for immediate satisfaction on this prick, set us up, by us I mean the country, set us up for continued inaction on global warming, a continued appointment to the Supreme Court of neo-fascist judges. We can't. So the long game has to be considered here. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast, or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored, fun and frivolity.